windshield just like I clean up at the track.
Oh, didn't think of that one. What else?
And we both...
Our champions. That's the easy one, Chris.
Introducing Champion Wiper Blades. Built to handle all kinds of weather. Made for the champion in all of us. Available at Pep Boys or visit championautoparts.com.
Hi, it's Jamie, Progressive's Employee of the Month, 2 months in a row. Leave a message at the... Hi, Jamie. It's me, Jamie. I just had a new idea for our song about the Name Your Price tool. So when it's like, tell us what you want to pay, hey, 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 and the trombone goes, blah, 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 and you say, we'll help you find coverage options to fit your budget. Then we just all do finger snaps while a choir goes, statements coming at ya, statements coming at ya. Yes? No? Maybe? Anyway, see your practice tonight. I got new lyrics for the rap break.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
What if I told you some stories you need to hear to believe?
A top boxing contender coming inside the walls of a prison to fight an inmate.
Introducing 30 for 30 podcasts.
I honestly thought I was going to die in the Arctic.
All news stories from the award-winning creators of 30 for 30.
Who else fails on that big a stage?
At that moment, I wanted to turn to somebody and say, help me.
Subscribe now on the ESPN app and Apple Podcasts.
30 for 30 podcast is presented by Mini. We're finding the best sports stories for you right now. And to do that, we're behind the wheel of the new Mini Countryman, the biggest Mini yet.
Please proceed to the highlighted route.
To find great sports stories, you have to get out into the world and follow your instincts. That's where the new Mini Countryman's all-wheel drive comes in handy. With all four, we can chase down a story in the city, the country, and most places in between. No matter what story you're chasing, the new Mini Countryman will help you find it. It's available now, and so are 30 for 30 podcasts.
DirecTV has been rated #1 in customer satisfaction over cable for 17 years running. But some people still like cable, just like some people like being crushed by a massive linebacker.
Thanks!
Shanking the game-winning field goal.
Yes, I missed!
Finding hair in their nachos.
Tastes better.
And getting snapped with a wet towel in the locker room.
Wow, fun!
For everyone else, there's DirecTV. For #1 rated customer satisfaction over cable, switch to DirecTV. Call 1-800-DirecTV.
As compared to other major subscription TV cable providers, claim based on 2001 to 2017 ACSI surveys of customers rating their own TV provider's performance.
An ESPN Radio Mike and Mike Extra Point.
LeBron James and the Cavaliers host Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Bucks tonight. I'm looking forward to this. You want to talk about marquee NBA matchups? Watching those two guys go head-to-head should be fun.
Yeah, James has owned him in the past. He's 12 wins. Antetokounmpo has 2, but Antetokounmpo is playing just, he's everybody looking for him to elevate to that MVP status. By the way, LeBron James is getting ready to play in the exact amount of games that Michael Jordan played in, 1,072 career games. Jordan was 40 years, 58 days old. LeBron's 32 and 312 days. So a little bit of difference in age when they get to this game.
And that's my fault. I should have led with that stat because that's really the key here. Tonight, LeBron will have played exactly as many regular season games as Jordan did in his career. And as Mike just pointed out, for Jordan, that included 2 lengthy hiatuses.
Hear more from Mike and Mike tomorrow morning on ESPN Radio.
Do you need a car? Been shopping only to be turned down because of bad credit, low credit, no credit, bankruptcy, or divorce? Guess what? Today's your lucky day because now you can buy a car, truck, or SUV, just about any vehicle. It's true. Bad credit doesn't matter. No credit doesn't matter. Bankruptcy or divorce, it just doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, your job is your ticket to your new vehicle. We're Auto Credit Express, and we've helped thousands of people just like you. Antonio H. told us, great company, got me connected, and the day I went in, I drove off in the car I wanted. 100% worth your time. Need a car? Get started now and drive off as early as today. Just go to oneignoremyscore.com right now. That's www.1ignoremyscore.com. Auto financing the easy way. Oneignoremyscore.com. Get started today. Auto financing the easy way.
ESPN Radio Sports Center.
I'm Jim Basketball. Roy Halladay, a 2-time Cy Young Award winner who pitched a perfect game and playoff no-hitter. died today when his private plane crashed into the Gulf of Mexico. He was only 40 years old. He retired after the 2013 season, was an amateur pilot who often posted on social media about small planes. Halladay is one of 23 pitchers ever to throw a perfect game. He's one of 7 to throw at least 2 no-hitters, one of just 5 in league history with multiple Cy Young awards and multiple no-hitters. PTI's Tony Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon.
It is a shock to my system when I hear something like this. It's always been.
Yeah, it's a shock to your system when I don't even think of the flying part, which I do virtually every day, not my own plane. But someone taking this young, 40 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, so you have this baseball career, which is 16 years and it's great and it's Hall of Fame, but you're hoping he has 40 more years just to live
12 years in Toronto and 4 in Philadelphia.
Halladay had 67 career complete games, the only pitcher with more in the wild card era, Randy Johnson. The latest college football playoff rankings out with Georgia, Alabama, Notre Dame, and Clemson again the front 4. Oklahoma, TCU in at 5-6. While unbeaten's Miami and Wisconsin round out the front 8. This Saturday, Oklahoma plays TCU, Notre Dame getting Miami. ESPN's Jeff Goodman reporting 3 UCLA men's basketball players, including LiAngelo Ball, the younger brother of Lonzo, were arrested in China just days before the season opening game against Georgia Tech in Shanghai. Players include the freshman Cody Riley and Jalen Hill, arrested on shoplifting charges, questioned about stealing from a Louis Vuitton store. Woj reporting the Suns have traded guard Eric Bledsoe to the Bucks for forward Greg Monroe and 2 2018 draft picks, a first and a second, both of which are protected. The 1-game suspension for Bucks wide receiver Mike Evans has been upheld. He drilled Saints cornerback Marshawn Lattimore on Sunday, costing him over $40,000. Packers coach Mike McCarthy confirms offensive tackle Brian Bulaga is out for the season with a torn ACL on his right knee. And former Colts defensive end and current assistant Robert Mathis has been charged with operating a vehicle while intoxicated and endangering a person.
Finally, there's a better way to buy travel. It's Upside.com. Now you can save a ton of money and get an Amazon gift card worth hundreds of dollars. Free. Save big on travel and get a big gift card every trip. Upside.com.
College football playoff rankings reaction show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. He's Mike Golick Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. The rankings are out. We want to get everybody caught up. The rankings have been released. Starting from the bottom, as Golick likes to do, we'll go from bottom to top. Auburn 10, Washington 9, Wisconsin 8, Miami 7, TCU 6, Oklahoma 5. The top 4 remains unchanged. Clemson 4, Notre Dame 3, Alabama 2, Georgia 1. The college football playoff rankings are brought to you by the 2018 Ford F-150. It doesn't just raise the bar, it is the bar. Now, we want to take your calls on this, obviously. 888-729-3776, 888-SAY-ESPN, 729-3776. We'll take your calls in just a second. Golick Jr., your immediate thoughts when you see this?
My immediate thoughts are first off to point out that the started from the bottom joke is a reference to a segment that I do on my show during the week, first and last, Monday through Friday, 4 a.m., and not some sort of weird innuendo that could be misconstrued as.
I was hoping you shamelessly promote your other shows.
Yeah, no, like you were, but you were also doing it in a way that invites a lot of innuendo. So I felt like I just clearly
you need to check yourself.
It's a family show, and the mouse is listening. So up to that. No, listen, my reaction to what we've got now is certainly selfishly for Notre Dame. This is great to see Miami up as high as they are at number 7 right now. A top 10 matchup for those two teams. So really for whoever comes out on the other side of that one with the win, a huge feather in their cap as this thing goes forward. For Miami, that's also important because Clemson's still at number 4 in there. Oklahoma had wonders about if they could jump Clemson based off a win this weekend, and I understand Clemson also beat a ranked North Carolina State team, but in a rivalry game in Bedlam where your Heisman Trophy candidate Baker Mayfield goes absolutely insane statistically, still manages to hold it down at the 5 spot. So TCU, the team that they'll get ready to face this week, at 6 right there, another one that's really going to decide the fate of the Big 12. And the beautiful part is the way you see these rankings set up, all of this gets to play out down the stretch, none of which is more important, I think, than Auburn at number 10 that still has Georgia and Alabama left on the schedule, still controls their fate in the SEC West going forward, and has a chance to really not only interrupt the party, but put themselves in the position, if true chaos starts to really break down in this whole process, to put themselves in position to maybe be in the mix if the meteor hits Earth.
Well, last week when the first playoff rankings came out, we asked the question, who could disrupt the bracket the most? My answer, Auburn. I still stick with that. We'll find out starting this weekend. I mean, Auburn playing Georgia is going to be an epic moment where we'll get to have something we can actually judge Georgia on, and we'll get a statement. Auburn at number 10 is a statement. We want you guys to make a statement. 888-729-3776. Ken in New York, thanks for calling the show, man.
Hey, guys, thanks for taking my call. And if you don't mind, I want to tell Golick, big fan of his father and his brother from back in the day. So big fan of the family.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
But I would like to say that the first thing that caught me was you got a TCU team who lost to Iowa State team who lost at home early in the year to a Texas team, and yet they're ahead of Miami. Now you bring up Oklahoma and the huge win and the way they did it. They certainly did it pretty with 62 points, but you're beating a team that had to go to overtime to beat, again, a very average Texas team. I just don't know why Miami's not a slot ahead of TCU. And finally, speaking of Miami, I do believe it's an elimination game. The winner isn't in, but I do believe that the loser could be out. Okay, guys, thanks.
Yeah,
thanks for the call, Ken.
We appreciate the call, and he's right. I mean, this is a truly an elimination game this weekend for them in Notre Dame. Now, obviously, Notre Dame not counting towards Miami's status within the ACC, but certainly we know the two-loss team and the difficulty that they're going to have trying to climb into a place where they've just never been before inside the college football playoffs final ranking.
I agree with that. Jay in South Carolina chiming in. Jay, thanks for calling the Rankings Reaction Show.
Hey, guys. First, I just want to say my condolences to Roy Holiday's family and friends. I heard about that today.
Of course, yes.
And that's, but other than that, I want to talk about the rankings and how I think they're really trying to set it up more from an entertainment standpoint and have these teams try to interrupt the top four. You, like Golick said, you got TCU and Auburn and potentially Miami trying to interrupt those top 4 or 5, and you're going to see a lot of changes in the next week or two. So I wouldn't be surprised some major changes coming, especially after this coming week.
Thanks for the call, man. I just don't buy that the committee, and you've sat in the room, we've talked about it, you've been in sort of the mock process. I don't buy the committee is sitting there saying, well, what would be the most entertaining? I think trying to figure out who the best teams are is already enough of a challenge, but asking a bunch of people to agree on what the most entertaining matchups would be or who belongs in there for entertainment value, that's what you do on ranking predictions on Twitter when you're looking for clickbait. That's not what you do when you're in the rankings committee.
No, that room, as you mentioned, every year, the playoff committee invites members of the media down to Dallas, Texas, to the exact room that they use, all of the same computers. You're sitting in the chairs that the committee will ultimately play judge and jury in, and you go through that exact process. And the one thing that you find out is it is really difficult because, like you said, we were grading out teams from 2013, 2014 that had already played, that had already gone through this, so their fate had been decided. We weren't actually deciding anything for groups of kids, and we still took it very seriously. You still get people trying to argue points and make the right decisions, let alone a group that's got the actual hopes and dreams and futures of these kids in their hands. So this is done in an effort to try and put together the best ranking. The place where brand names and things like that can sneak in are the implicit biases that we all carry. Listen, we look at the logos on side of the helmet and people look at Alabama and say, yeah, maybe their strength of schedule hasn't been otherworldly so far, but this is a group that has sort of earned their clout in college football because of the ability they've demonstrated year in and year out to slot different guys into the same template and still have success. Clemson in their recent run of success kind of bodes well in the same way for them, despite a loss to Syracuse, where they're also cognizant of the fact that Kelly Bryant was out for the second half. So all of that gets taken into account in a way that might be subconscious as much as anything else, because it's still a room that can be swayed by strong opinions and a great, well-argued case.
So I'll always make this for anybody that has never listened to the two of us hang out. I have a music background, and I'm a Grammy voter. And for me, the decision every year on who to vote for the Grammys is something I take incredibly seriously. It changes lives. And that's absolutely on my mind every year. I listen to everything that I vote for. If I don't know what I'm doing in a category, I don't touch the category. I would never sit down and say, well, if I nominate this guy, he'll play the show, and that would be really good for ratings. You just got to trust that Paul, in the long term and the short term, that's what's best for college football.
And you think about who comprises a lot of this committee. We know a lot of these guys, former coaches, former athletic directors, people that are used to being in charge of a lot of these same groups. And so they understand what's at stake. They've been around these settings where the difference between going to a bowl game at all, which this committee decides when they go through the final ranking, they're slotting for not just the college football playoff games, but the New Year's Six games all on down the line. So they control which teams are getting those next 15 practices, who's getting that added exposure in certain games, all of these things that matter tremendously. I mean, Charlie Weiss, who was my original coach at Notre Dame, was unfortunately fired after my sophomore year, and always said he obviously regretted the way it ended because he understands that by him leaving, it affected the lives of a lot of kids that were left behind. And so that's something that college football coaches take really seriously, the impact they certainly can have directly, and now the guys sitting in that room, the impact that they can have indirectly on what happens with these groups.
JD in Alabama chiming in. Thanks for calling the Rankings Reaction Show.
How you doing, guys?
Great, man.
Good. I'm calling in from Montgomery, Alabama. Got a question. Alabama and Georgia won both, I think, by 14 points. If Alabama had played in Death Valley and won, do you think they would have jumped?
Thanks for the call, JD. I don't think a win over LSU is not as quality as a win over Notre Dame. So if you're looking for a jump, if you're looking for Alabama to jump Georgia, I just don't see it happening until the two of them play more. I mean, Auburn's going to be a telling piece of this for both teams, and Auburn will hold some of the destiny. But right now, if you're looking for a single win on Alabama that can result in you jumping over Georgia, in my mind, there is no win Georgia can get right now that's better than beating number 3 Notre Dame. It's just not going to happen. So if that's the separating factor, Georgia's going to be on top of Alabama the whole way.
Yeah, I didn't think this weekend was going to be the one that happened, and that equation gets a lot easier when it comes down to two teams that are going to have a quality common opponent amongst them by the time they get to the SEC title game if both hold serve, and then the chance for a head-to-head victory. We know the possibility of two teams entering from that conference that people continue to talk about, but at the very least, we'll have all of those other plot points along the way in this. They're going to come and decide it long before this is over. So as far as where they stand now, no, that's a no-brainer that coming out of this weekend, nothing would have really been enough, I think.
You guys have stacked the phones. You want to react? 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. We'll obviously continue to let you react. Also, we may have a new Heisman frontrunner. We'll get Golic Jr.'s thoughts on that, too, when we come back. It's the college football playoff rankings reaction show, ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
The college football playoff.
What if I told you some stories you need to hear to believe?
Everywhere you went, Dan and Dave.
And that's these two athletes that are going to go to the Olympics this year, and it's going to be settled in Barcelona.
When Reebok approached Dave and I, the first thing both of us said, neither one of us are on this team yet.
The thought never, ever crossed my mind that Dan nor Dave would not make that Olympic team.
The all-new 30 for 30 podcast. Subscribe now on the ESPN app or Apple Podcasts.
This is Jody Avirgan. Thanks for listening to ESPN Film's 30 for 30 podcasts, where each story is made by a different team of unique, talented producers. Wondering where to find talented folks for your company? If you've ever had to build a team, you know it's not easy. And that's where ZipRecruiter comes in. With ZipRecruiter, you can post a job to 100 or more job sites with just one click, and then their powerful technology efficiently matches the right people to your job better than anyone else. That's why over 80% of jobs posted on ZipRecruiter get a qualified candidate in just one day. Experience the ZipRecruiter difference and find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by businesses of all sizes to find the most talented, qualified job candidates with immediate results. And right now, listeners to this show can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/30 for 30. That's ZipRecruiter.com/30 for 30.
And now, a page from the diary of Flo.
Dear Diary, I got the brush off again. I don't get it. Is there something wrong with the way I wave? Elbow, wrist, elbow, wrist. Why won't that little basset hound acknowledge me? I'm friendly. I give everyone peace of mind when I protect their homes through Progressive. He should be jumping for joy when I walk by.
Save an average of 17% on car insurance when you bundle home and auto through Progressive.
Maybe it's me. No, it's him.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Discounts not available in all states or situations.
Say hello to a kitchen clean that zings. Penallen Max Aroma's Lemon Multi-Purpose Cleaner leaves a long-lasting lemony scent for a stunning kitchen clean that makes you want to sing. Clean bright with Penallen.
54-yard touchdown pass.
This is Pat Narduzzi, head football coach of the Pittsburgh Panthers.
Hi, this is Larry Fedora, head football coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels.
This is college football
on ESPN Radio.
Let's go. We came to eat. We came to eat.
The North Carolina Tar Heels travel to Pittsburgh to face the Pitt Panthers. Coverage begins Thursday at 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and on the ESPN app. Presented by the 2018 Ford F-150.
College Football Playoff Rankings Reaction Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. He's Mike Golick Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. All callers via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You can also tweet us on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed at ESPN Radio, at MGolick Jr. 57, at Jason Fitz. You guys have stacked the phones. 888-729-3776. We love it. We're going to let you chime in. 888-729-3776. Don't forget, in just a few minutes, we're going to go live on Periscope. So if you follow us on Twitter, if you get out to any of the ESPN socials, you'll see it out there too. We're going to be on Twitter. So for the next hour, for the rest of the show, and this is how we're going to do it, every time we go to break, where Golick Jr. and I usually run to try and find a chance to pee. No, we are not going to do that. We're going to hang out with you guys, take your questions on Periscope, talk to you guys on Twitter, do some crazy stuff. So we're going to be really engaged during that time. So even if you're listening, you'll want to get out on the socials, hang out with us there. We continue to react. The top four the same as it was last week. The big surprise so far seems to be at number 10, 2-loss Auburn. So we want you guys to chime in. Marty in New York, thanks for calling the show, man.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Great, man.
I got a comment. Okay, one, does Miami's brand on the side of his head don't mean anything? And now I got two questions for you guys. One, who has a better RPI strength of schedule, Clemson or Miami? And if none of the rankings change, who's going to be in the top 6 games on New York? Your opinions. Thanks for letting me call.
Thanks for the call, man. Appreciate that. RPI strength schedule. We'll have to look that up. That's going to take a second for us to find. Golick, do you have a gut on the top 6 bowl games?
The top 6 bowl games. In this, we would assume. Oh, here we go. We've got RPI strength to schedule.
Oh, there it is.
Right here.
Got the graphic.
All right, here we go. All right. Well, we've got strength of record right now at this point, which is essentially the strength of what you've done so far. RPI, basically, our football power index essentially ends up looking at going forward who they project out the best chance of. But right now, if we're going off strength of record, Miami actually sits at number 2 at 8-0 right now. Number 1 would still be Georgia. Number 3, Clemson. Number 4, Oklahoma. Number 5, Alabama. Number 6, Notre Dame. 7, TCU. And 8, Wisconsin. So again, that's going off of what have these teams done so far this season and where do they rank. A lot of that has to do with not only who you've played so far, which would be the strength of your schedule thus far this season, but the difficulty of obtaining that record based on your schedule compared to the average team in the country. So
a number we should note is going to change substantially over the next few weeks. Again, Auburn's about to play Georgia. Auburn's going to play Alabama. All of these things are going to change strength of record for some of those teams. Miami is about to play Notre Dame. I mean, this is the time of year. TCU, Oklahoma. You're going to see a lot of these matchups that are going to sort of give us some clarity in these top 10. I think what we're going to find is some real clarity.
Yeah, and one of those things to note going forward is when you look at these rankings, someone mentioned the Football Power Index or the RPI. The Football Power Index says there's a 36% chance that Notre Dame will finish 11-1. The average top 25 team would only have a 5% chance to finish with one or fewer losses against Notre Dame's schedule. So those are the kind of things that these metrics are trying to measure, is if you were to put the average college football team in the place of one of these squads and go through their schedule, what percentage chance do they have of obtaining the same record going in?
So we'll go to Kevin in Canada next. Kevin, thanks for calling the show, man. What do you got?
Yeah, diehard Notre Dame fan. I was just wondering about you guys thought about, in light of the defeat against Vandy on the weekend, I am really afraid of Miami, especially the fact that they're going to be playing in Miami. What do you guys think about that one?
It's interesting that the Hard Rock was not necessarily a place that was associated with a monstrous home field advantage until this last weekend. This was a big win over Tech for them for a lot of reasons, not the least of which was the effect of that stadium, because it's not in the normal site on campus where we're used to in the Orange Bowl back in the day that created such a feeling there for the locals. But now that the team's had success, now that it had a big game last weekend and won this weekend, it was big for that Miami team. The reason I still have doubts about them is just because of how much they've turned the ball over. Now, they're up near the top in the country as far as turnover differential on the season, but that's because their defense has forced 4 turnovers in 3 straight games now. Right. An insane pace to try and outpace the rate at which their offense and Malik Rozier, that quarterback, have given the ball away the last few games. Notre Dame slightly above them in turnover margin on the season, and part of that's because they've done such a good job taking care of the ball in addition to taking it away.
You mentioned sort of what last week meant to Miami. Another part of what last week did for Miami in a win that was fairly convincing against Virginia Tech is it sort of erased our memory of some recent struggles for Miami where they didn't particularly look good. I'm not taking anything away. I know a win is a win, but Miami didn't look impressive in their wins. Georgia Tech, we mentioned earlier. There's been a couple of those over the last few weeks that Miami didn't look great. So we were sort of sitting here a week ago saying, where does Miami go? Now, a great statement means we move forward. I'm also not going to buy, and you would speak to this better than anybody, I think that there are certain programs, and I would put Notre Dame on that list, that don't really have to worry about home field for another. Like, there are certain places that are so amazing to play. If you play in Alabama every weekend, you go into another stadium, you're not overwhelmed. I think if you play for Notre Dame every weekend, you go into another stadium, you're not necessarily overwhelmed. I mean, crowd size might be big, might be bigger, it might be louder, but there's not this sense. People say that sometimes Alabama's beating you when you walk off the bus because you already feel intimidated by the process and the program. I don't think that exists for Notre Dame to anybody.
No, and we say it all the time when teams would come to South Bend, is a lot of teams get beaten by all the ghosts around there. If you look around and listen to Rockne and Gipp and the rest of those guys for a little too long, you start to buy into the ambiance of that setting. And that is one thing, a Notre Dame team that certainly is young at some skill positions, isn't green everywhere, and certainly has enough leadership to take them down there in that environment. Now, mechanically, you worry about things like the snap count, having to focus more on silent cadence. Maybe that gives the defense a bit of a jump if they can key in on that. But if you've got a group that you can count on to manipulate the snap count a little bit, you can mitigate some of that. Not all of it. It requires a lot of extra attention on the part of receivers who are supposed to be looking into the ball anyway, and everyone on down the line to really make sure they're locked in on those things. But ultimately, like you said, this is a squad with enough experience over the last couple of years in big games to try and get through that as best they can.
Don't forget, guys, we're about to get really progressive and go out on Twitter during the breaks, hang out with you guys on Periscope. ESPN Radio, presented by Progressive Insurance, creators of the Name Your Price tool. Choose from a range of coverage options. Pick the price that works for you. Straight ahead, the latest college football playoff rankings. Don't forget, they're out. We've given them to you. We've got another hour, and there's going to be huge reaction straight ahead. Plus, we'll tell you where we stand in the Heisman race. We're going to go over to Twitter and Periscope, hang out with you guys. You'll be able to ask questions there. The hashtag rankings reactions. Hashtag rankings reactions. You can get to us there as we react to what looks like a pretty predictable top 10.
Yep, predictable right now, but as you mentioned, a huge slate of games that only got made bigger by where some of these teams climbed up in the rankings. The Pac-12 is on trial this weekend as well. Washington creeps into that top 10, but faces a Stanford team that could very much easily erase this conference from contention.
It's just the beginning of this weekly sort of overreaction. We're going to do it. We're going to keep it going, obviously, on social media. It's a college football playoff rankings reaction show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
When the top is within reach, either keep climbing or get blown off course.
I could care less about the poll. What significance does a poll have right now?
College football lives here. ESPN Radio.
The North Carolina Tar Heels travel to Pittsburgh to face the Pitt Panthers. Coverage begins Thursday at 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and on the ESPN app. Presented by the 2018 Ford F-150.
Football Sunday on ESPN Radio. The Packers have dropped 3 straight and 2 without Aaron Rodgers. Brett Hundley showed signs of promise Monday night, but now they head to Soldier Field as underdogs for the first time in 9 years when they face the Bears.
Take off the training wheels. Let this kid play. Live in your hopes, not in your fears.
Football Sunday. The Packers and Bears.
We're working our way towards kickoff.
Noon Eastern on ESPN Radio.
DJ K-Dub checking in, previously on the Feinbaum Show.
You know who I think should be fired? Pete Carroll. And let me tell you why.
Well, let me tell you why you're not going to even finish your thought, because Pete Carroll is at the Seattle Seahawks and has about as much interest in taking this job as I do, becoming the Prime Minister of North Korea. So, I mean, let's try to keep it real here, okay?
The Paul Feinbaum Show, weekdays at 3 Eastern on the ESPN app and on the SEC Network.
Russillo!
McShay with Will Kane. Okay, Bama, Ohio State, neutral site.
Bama.
Neutral site, Georgia, Clemson.
Georgia.
Notre Dame, Penn State.
Notre Dame. Tough one, though.
Penn State. Wisconsin, Miami in Fort Lauderdale, and the kids have been there a long time.
Long time?
I didn't
think they have sunburn?
Ryan Russillo. Check him out weekdays at 1 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Mike and Mike.
Good morning. We are back in better than ever.
Tomorrow morning at 6 Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPN2.
Keep it locked to the Dan Le Batard Show on ESPN Radio.
It was an amazing run, and I think we all need to genuflect at how Vin Scully made it his entire life without giving an opinion that would be viewed as polarizing. Kieran, put it on the poll. Is Vin Scully's lifetime of non-controversial comments the most unbreakable record in sports?
The Dan Le Batard Show, now 10 to 1 Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPNRadio.com.
Reaper, you're not allowed to talk!
The Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugats.
Halloween!
Kids in costumes going door-to-door collecting candy. Anybody can spend $200 by a professionally made get-up and strut around showing up everybody else. Those are the rich kids who get a sweaty palm full of loose candy corn from me. I'm Greg Cody, and that's how it was back in my day.
Dash more of the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugats on ESPN Radio and ESPNU.
Mike and Mike.
I tried to go trick-or-treating. I told my daughter, I said, Dylan, 4 o'clock trade deadline, 4:01, we're out the door. We're going to be ringing doorbells. We're going to get a lot of candy. And I'm about to leave, and all of a sudden I get a call that the A.J. McCarron Browns trade was almost near, and I'm on the phone. I'm taking her trick-or-treating. This went on for about 2 hours. So the Cleveland Browns marred my Halloween trick-or-treat experience with my daughter. I'm still angry to this day.
Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio and ESPN2.
Jalen and Jacoby on ESPN Radio.
I know you love the Obamas. I know you love Jim Harbaugh. I know you love Michigan football. Another thing I know you love, Jalen Rose, adult beverages. I've got some adult beverage news here. They've done some research, and I found this kind of shocking. In the last year, wine and beer sales have been slipping a little dramatically. However, hard liquor sales are going in the other direction. I have a lot of theories as to why this may be the case. I think this is a health thing. I think that there are healthier options in hard liquor than there are in both wine and beer. Less calories, less sugar. Options in hard liquor. What do you think of that theory?
Get straight to it. You alluded to it. The bottom line is this: 12 ounces of beer or a shot of liquor.
Download and subscribe to the Jalen and Jacoby podcast on the ESPN app or wherever you listen to podcasts.
ESPN Radio Sports Center.
I'm Jim Basketball. Two-time Cy Young Award winner Roy Halladay died today at the age of 40 when his private plane crashed into the Gulf of Mexico. The 8-time All-Star threw a perfect game in the regular season, tossed a no-hitter in the playoffs, and won 203 games over 12 Major League seasons before retiring after the 2013 campaign. ESPN Major League Baseball insider and analyst Tim Kirkshire.
Well, I'll remember him as a great pitcher and a future Hall of Famer, and I'll remember him as one of the hardest working players I've ever been around.
Halladay, meantime, was one of 5 pitchers in league history with multiple Cy Young Awards and multiple no-hitters. The latest college football playoff rankings are out. Ohio State, Penn State are out of the front 5. Georgia, Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, and Oklahoma, your top 5. TCU up to 6. Miami and Wisconsin, the unbeatens, round out the top 8. This Saturday, Oklahoma, TCU, Notre Dame, and Miami. ESPN's Jeff Goodman reporting UCLA men's basketball players, 3 of which, including LiAngelo Ball, were arrested in China just days before their season-opening game against Georgia Tech, arrested on shoplifting charges. The Suns have traded guard Eric Bledsoe to the Bucks for Greg Monroe and 2 draft picks, including a 2018 lottery-protected first-round choice. Tonight in the NBA includes the Cavs up on the Bucks as they play the second quarter, 51-45. Kevin Love has a dozen early points.
Football Sunday on ESPN Radio. The Green Bay Packers look to stay in the thick of the playoff race when they travel to Chicago to take on the Bears. Coverage begins Sunday at noon Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. This is the College Football Playoff Rankings Reaction Show with Jason Fitz and Mike Golick Jr. on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
That's the craziest break I've ever sat through. Hanging out on Twitter and Periscope, answering all the questions, having a blast. It's the College Football Playoff Rankings Reaction Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. He's Mike Golick Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. As always, we're presented by Progressive Insurance. All callers via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And you know the Twitter feed, at ESPN Radio, at MGolick Jr. 57, at Jason Fitz, 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. Spectacular time. A lot of people asking us on Twitter about UCF, and I'm going to continue to say absolutely no, nothing. But as we just broke from Twitter, you made a resounding statement about what's going to happen this weekend that will affect and impact this entire thing. So you went right square on the record on this Oklahoma thing.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma is going to beat TCU pretty handily at this point. TCU has climbed up to this spot on the backs of a couple of ranked wins. West Virginia, I believe, are they still inside the top 25? If not, that was a top 25 win for them previously. That was counted towards the loss to Iowa State, most notably, and then that win against Oklahoma State. I just think this is a flawed football team. You look at them, and it's basically Kenny Hill trying to get the ball as close to the sidelines as they can, make plays with his feet, but it's a group up front that is challenged and as difficult a time as Oklahoma's defense had last week in Bedlam. I don't think TCU is sound enough to challenge them. I think this TCU domino is ripe to fall, and I think it happens this weekend.
And I said it last week. The best part about TCU losing before the first playoff ranking is we didn't have to have a worthless conversation about whether or not TCU belonged. So I haven't seen anything from TCU that makes me think they're going to beat Oklahoma. Although Oklahoma proved last week you can win a major game and not even, did defenses even show up? I mean, I think they played on air. Both sides just played on air, scored a bunch of points, and we're in a world where we were talking about it before the show started. Like, if you're looking for like your grandpa's football game of, smash mouth defense and we're going to run 3 yards in a cloud of dust, that is not going to happen. Oklahoma, TCU, it's just going to be like everything else that's happening right now. Oklahoma puts up a bunch of points and then hopes that they can put up more than they give up, and that works.
Yeah, Oklahoma's 69th in defensive efficiency, which is nice. The over 28 points per game right now. And you mentioned that last weekend. Baker Mayfield, though, played himself very much to probably near the top of the Heisman conversation. I mean, you had Saquon Barkley, who was finally held out of the end zone in a game this season, and who had had a rough last couple of games, really. But Baker Mayfield going out and putting up huge numbers on a big stage, playing a marquee position for a team near the top of the college football rankings. It's not really a difficult formula to figure out with the Heisman Trophy.
Well, let's stick with the Heisman Trophy for a second. By the way, a lot of you guys chiming in, and we'll continue to try and answer some of these Twitter Periscope questions as we go on. But you mentioned the Heisman conversation, and Baker Mayfield, at the very least, I mean, the brand of Baker Mayfield and what it's become is grabbing everybody's attention. It feels like this year, Saquon Barkley early on was the big heavy favorite. I get that. I understand that. I don't know that there's been a clear-cut guy that the entire world has wanted to agree upon in this process. And because they haven't done that, I feel like it's sort of up for the taking. All of the Heisman contenders, by the way, have plenty of upside. We're brought to you by Upside.com. Low prices, great rewards, 6-star service. You deserve a better business trip. Upside.com. You like that?
Well, so it's an inside joke with our producer, Dan Z, right here, who used to be with me during the week. The Upside read, a special place in everyone's heart. The Heisman Trophy, a special place in everyone else's heart. I'm really kind of out on it. I'm more of a Piesman guy myself, given to the offensive or defensive lineman who does the most athletic thing during the season.
I don't like pie. Can we have a cakeman?
Listen, I don't make the rules around here, all right? Fat people all outside of your jurisdiction have made these decisions, so you as a small, skinny person can just bow out gracefully. I understand you claim to have been a chubby kid, but that doesn't buy you any good grace here.
Little Fatty Fitz. That's
Little Fatty Fitz? Oh, you had a tough time in middle school.
No, nobody else nicknamed me that. I said that the other night, and Jordan Rogers decided when we were hanging out on Sunday night.
So you, like, bullied yourself?
I just referred to myself as Little Fatty Fitz. Yeah, I mean, I was a chunky kid, so I went Little Fatty Fitz, and then Jordan, the rest of the show, called me Little Fatty Fitz.
It's all right. You showed them. You picked up that fiddle and you played your way to glory.
Oh, God. And now I get to sit next to you in the living room with football helmets behind me. So many life questions. No, I think that at this point you have to look at it and say what the Heisman looks like. I don't think we know. I think right now Baker Mayfield has become a big brand, and he's become sort of a commodity everybody sees on the highlight reel. And I know that that's not supposed to matter, but the fact is, it feels like it does, right? It feels like I just feel like that's part of the equation, and because of that, Baker's back in the conversation.
Well, and you look at the odds right now as of November 6th, courtesy of the Westgate Las Vegas Superbook. Baker Mayfield leading the charge at 4-7 right now. Saquon Barkley 3-2. Josh Adams from Notre Dame 8-1, and Bryce Love, who was held out a game ago, got back into the equation last week. Held in check, against missed their game against Oregon State. Was back in last week, but only 69 yards. That includes a 152-yard carry in that bunch. So a tough couple of weeks for his Heisman stock. Still that high yards per carry average, all those different things. But right now, Baker Mayfield, as far as Vegas, the odds-on leader.
We're getting a ton of questions from you guys on Twitter. Also, you guys have filled the phone lines, 888-729-3776. Joe in West Virginia, thanks for hanging on. Thanks for calling the College Football Playoff Rankings Reaction Show.
It's Troy.
Sorry, Troy. What do you got, buddy?
Okay. You talking about schedules? Alabama never has a tough schedule. Never. They always have the easy schedule they are. Notre Dame will win this week. Oklahoma will win this week. Georgia is going to be your national champion. When they play Alabama, Georgia will beat them by 21. And Notre Dame should be 2. Alabama should be 3.
Both claims that I appreciate, but listen, this is the difference. People are going to get upset about Alabama continuing to be up top, despite by what most people would say is a schedule that hasn't really challenged them yet. And my response to that is always going to be, Alabama has borne this out and proven it. Like, they do this every year. They do it regardless of who's there, and they usually wind up either winning the national championship or coming darn close the way they did last year. It takes a superhuman effort to try and go out and beat the team. So am I going to lose sleep over that team being number 2? No, because you know why? When they play that Georgia outfit, I can guarantee you that is not going to be a 21-point game on either side of that equation. You still look at the guys that they trot out there. Now, maybe you look at the way, oh my God, is my family trolling me right now? Is this what's happening?
No, please go on. Please go on.
All right, let me continue my rant. But anyway, you look at this team. I saw a stat on here that blew my mind. Alabama, the top 1 or 2 recruiting class in the country for the last 7 years. Now, that's worth noting because because they lost two more linebackers. They'd already lost their 2 starters for the season in week 1, and they are still going to trot out 5-star talent in that group. Nick Saban is still going to have probably better starters than your favorite team at home in that linebacker core coming off that 3rd string that were probably flirting with red shirts. That's the kind of players this place has recruited over the years. They have earned that bit of clout, and so I'm going to wait for someone to knock them off before I'm going to remove them from the pedestal voluntarily.
Anybody that says they haven't seen anything from them, I'd say this. I'm 5'9", 5'9.5", 165 pounds. If I walk into a bar right now and I see a guy that's, 6'6" and 400 pounds, I haven't seen him kick anybody's butt. I still don't want to fight him. And that's where Alabama is. They're 6'6", 400 pounds. I don't want to fight him. And we've seen several people on Twitter. There's one person particularly several times have said, Saban doesn't want the Sooners. Nick Saban is not scared of anything, and rightfully so. Nick Saban should not be scared of any program. No, I mean, there's just no – Alabama will do what Alabama's going to do. Maybe Georgia is better. We don't know yet. You're right, Alabama hasn't played anybody. But dang it, they've got the benefit of the doubt in my mind.
Yep, that's a solid looking outfit across the board. Minka Fitzpatrick also nursing a hamstring, though. If there's anything that's going to make me a little concerned, it's that guy.
Hey, guys. How y'all doing?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm good. I've been born and raised a diehard Auburn fan, and I'm looking at the schedule, and what is giving them a number 10 spot in the playoff poll as far as giving them that high?
Thanks for the call, Tyler. I mean, I think that part of that, Auburn is a team that everybody's been high on anyway. I mean, yeah, they have the 2 losses, but again, it's not. This isn't a sneaky thing for anybody, right?
Listen, you look at Auburn, and the loss to LSU is a brutal one. I think it goes back to the beginning of the season, a close loss against a Clemson team that's inside. You talk about a good loss. We always say that for Notre Dame. Auburn's beaten everyone else pretty soundly. That includes with a ranked Mississippi State team that Alabama's getting ready to play this weekend. Thumping Arkansas, thumping Texas A&M. Really, the LSU game against the team that just lost by 14, which felt like a moral victory for LSU against Alabama going into this weekend with Ed Orgeron and company and what they were able to accomplish there. So I can understand Auburn, especially given what they've got coming up. I know the committee's not supposed to be rewarding that in these rankings. I don't think they are, but we'll find out very quickly where their lot in life's going to be.
Straight ahead. Keep the calls coming. Keep the tweets coming. 888-729-3776. We're hanging out with you for the next 45 minutes. We're hanging out with you also on Twitter. Don't forget, somebody's been asking about USC. We'll get into some of that stuff. We're going to keep the talk going on Twitter right now. You can get out to us on Periscope, and we'll keep reacting to the latest college football playoff rankings right here coming up on this the Rankings Reaction Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
The College Football Playoff on ESPN and on ESPN Radio.
Ohio State had a great win last weekend against Penn State. That head-to-head matchup is important to the selection committee and will continue to be important to the selection committee.
Who's in?
Football Sunday on ESPN Radio. The Packers have dropped 3 straight and 2 without Aaron Rodgers. Brett Hundley showed signs of promise Monday night, but now they head to Soldier Field as underdogs for the first time in 9 years when they face the Bears.
Take off the training wheels. Let this kid play. Live in your hopes, not in your fears.
Football Sunday. The Packers and Bears.
We're working our way towards kickoff.
Noon Eastern on ESPN Radio.
And now, a page from the diary of Flo.
Dear Diary, I got the brush off again. I don't get it. Is there something wrong with the way I wave? Elbow, wrist, elbow, wrist. Why won't that little basset hound acknowledge me? I'm friendly. I give everyone peace of mind when I protect their homes through Progressive. He should be jumping for joy when I walk by.
Save an average of 17% on car insurance when you bundle home and auto through Progressive.
Maybe it's me. No, it's him.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Discounts not available in all states or situations.
It's always time for the right time.
When a 3-time All-Pro wants to talk to you about what his experience is like playing against Tom Brady, let the man on the line. We got Trevor Price.
I have sacked Tom Brady several times. I've hit him several times. And that mess he's saying about his body kind of goes soft and limp before it hits the ground, that is 100% true. You're like hitting a pillow.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Weekdays from 4 to 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio or on the ESPN app.
Bomani. The Ryan Russillo Show.
Andrew Luck out for the season.
He's 28 years of age, and we may have already seen the best of Andrew Luck.
I don't think it's hyperbole. It just seems soon. Like, let's see what 2018 is all about. Well, we already know what's going to happen, though. Whenever the next time he takes the field, never felt better. We're all going to hear the right things.
The PR campaign comes out.
Exactly. But I don't think it's irresponsible to go, we may not see it again.
The Ryan Russillo Show. Weekdays at 1 Eastern on ESPN Radio and on the ESPN app. Mike and Mike. Tomorrow morning at 6 Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPN2.
Oye, amigo, it is the Dan Le Batard Show on ESPN Radio.
Roy, was Stugat supposed to read something there? Because he was searching, he was rummaging through the garbage can. What he didn't throw away is what he was wearing me out with, which is, hey, Dan, I'm 24-21-1 this year against the spread in the NFL.
I found
He's dug up chicken shreds from 4 months ago from the bottom of that garbage can.
The Dan Le Batard Show, now 10 to 1 Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPNradio.com.
Auto parts from Champion aren't for everyone. They're for champions, like Formula Drift World Champion Chris Forsberg. Right, Chris?
Actually, Champion parts are for everyone who appreciates quality batteries, wipers, lights, filters, and spark plugs.
You mean every champion drift artist who defies gravity and laughs at the laws of thermodynamics?
I mean everyone who appreciates quality parts, like my mom, Uncle Steve, Ray Ray.
Okay, we get it.
Champion batteries, wipers, lighting, filters, and spark plugs. Made for the champion and all of us. Available at Pep Boys or visit championautoparts.com.
What make you laugh this weekend?
Guillermo, what do you got?
A-Rod and J-Lo were at the UM game this weekend. They put them on the Kiss Cam, and they denied us peasants of what we wanted most, Kiss.
Why?
They're usually so public with their displays of affection.
They're in Vanity Fair.
It seemed like they had no idea what the Kiss Cam was.
What a comeback. They're America's first couple. They really are.
Catch more of the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugats on ESPN Radio and ESPNU.
Mike and Mike.
Why did the Patriots trade Jimmy Garoppolo to the 49ers yesterday?
Going back to the spring, the Patriots made attempts to re-sign Jimmy Garoppolo to keep him in New England, and they were unable to do so. And they continued to try, and they continued not to be able to get something done. It became apparent after a certain amount of time that they were not going to be able to re-sign him, that obviously the opportunities and money were going to be too great on the market.
Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio and ESPN2.
College Football Playoff Rankings Reaction Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. He's Mike Golick Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. The Twitter action has been spectacular, guys. We love all of this interaction on Periscope. Really appreciate it. We're continuing the conversation. So if you're listening here, get out there, do it in both places, and hang out with us. Also, keep on the phone lines. We're going to get to you guys, too. 888-729-3776. I called it ESPN Rodeo earlier because it's kind of like a rodeo right now. We're balancing a lot of things here, Mike.
Big-time Nashville guy over here, Jason Fitz, trying to remind you guys that he was a big country music star.
Is there another type of chap? Anyway, we'll
have the fun ready.
Oh, live radio. So the rankings reaction show. Yeah, where were we? Suddenly I'm pulling the collar a little bit.
Everyone got a little stiff in here. It's going to be all right, guys. Simmer down. That's not nearly the hottest take that's going to be on this show right now. We're going to be okay. And a lot of people asking that question about their teams coming into this weekend now is who's going to come out okay and who's not going to not. We had what I read you before as the games that have the biggest chance to influence the playoff scene coming up this weekend. And there are four huge ones. Notre Dame at Miami is up top on that list. TCU at Oklahoma, a 5-6 matchup right now. Notre Dame at Stanford later on in the season. Alabama at Auburn as well. And Georgia at Auburn. So we get the answer someone was asking us on Twitter about who is the most prime for upset this weekend. Georgia also going on the road this weekend to face Auburn, much the same as Notre Dame goes on the road to face Miami.
It's going to be a tough, but that's what I want. I think that's part of the reason we continue to say relax, everybody, because over the course of the next few weeks, these guys are going to they're going to figure it out. One question we did get that we haven't gotten to yet that I think is interesting is that Ohio State and Penn State cost Wisconsin a CFP bid. I mean, that's they lose, and is that enough? And to my answer to that is yes. I mean, at this point, Wisconsin needed all the love they could possibly get, all the positive momentum they could possibly get. I don't think. I think if we're in a situation where Wisconsin ends up undefeated and you end up with Georgia, Alabama having one of the two of those teams losing the SEC championship game in a nail-biter, I think that we're going to find Wisconsin on the outside looking in.
Yeah, and we had Jeff Palm on before on the radio show from CBSSports.com who does his projections, not based on anything with the
Jerry Palm,
on before, CBS Sports writer for college football, who does his projections for the end of the season, not based off anything the committee says or does. And in his projections, he had Wisconsin undefeated through the Big Ten in the Final Four, a belief that we've heard a lot more from people that the committee really wouldn't ever consider leaving out an undefeated Power 5 team with a conference championship in tow. Now, who they face in that conference championship, to your point about what happened with Ohio State and Penn State, is still up in the air. That's why Michigan State's place in this whole scene becomes increasingly more important as they hang around with one loss after a big upset win against Penn State.
You're listening to the Rankings Reaction Show. He's Mike Golick Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. You guys have stacked the phones, 888-729-3776. We'll go to Jeff in Florida. Jeff, thanks for calling the show, man. What do you got?
Man, I'm just wanting some love for the Miami Hurricanes. I don't know what they've got to do. They got these one-loss teams ahead of them. They're looking great. The game Saturday night was electric. Miami showed what they can do. What's it going to take for Miami to make that jump and get up there? I mean, I know they got Notre Dame coming up, but, hey, what if that's a close game? Miami barely loses that game.
And Jeff, thanks for the call. I think if Miami barely loses that game, they're in a whole heap of trouble. I mean, that's just the way it is. I think Miami has to win this game. It doesn't matter if they win by one. Miami and Notre Dame essentially control their own destinies this weekend, at least. I mean, I think that if Miami beats Notre Dame, even if it's a 1-point win, if they come out on top in that, then I think you see a drastic jump from Miami, because then everybody has to take it seriously. But right now, I think that it's too crowded ahead of them. And yeah, if they lose that game, that's going to get incredibly tough for them.
Yeah, if you're asking what Miami has to do, they have to win this weekend. Like, they still control their own destiny going forward as far as what they're going to do in their side of the ACC. Coastal Division, and the chance to face Clemson, who could still stay at number 4 through the remainder of the season, and a chance for a big win there. But you make it a little more difficult because the strength of schedule hasn't been in your favor so far. Because up until this weekend, you can say, yeah, Miami looked great this weekend, but it had been an outfit that had really labored through games against a triple option Georgia Tech, against a North Carolina team they had no business being close with, and now have a chance to go out and prove it on the biggest stage they've had so far this year. So we're going to find out about Miami. That's no issue.
Again, it all comes back to everybody just wants to look at the record, or everybody just, you want to look at the one piece that supports your argument. I almost feel like college football fans become like couch lawyers at this time of the year. They're only giving you the piece of the argument that supports their client, their favorite team.
And that's the best part about the committee's room. So inside that room for the committee and what they do, it's a group that has all of the rankings for everything put side by side for them on computers in that room that match up. All right, here is the strength of resume for this school. Here's the strength of record for this school, on and on down that list. And so it puts them all side by side for you so that you don't have to worry about having to go try and track these things down, because I think all of us will latch on to one stat in particular that helps our cause, that benefits our team, like you said, and ultimately doesn't paint the whole picture in a way that we hope the rest of these stats in together, along with the eye test that this
Wisconsin's, I think, a good football team, but how do you know? I mean, how do you know at this point what the Badgers really are?
College football lives here. ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
When the top is within reach, either keep climbing or get blown off course.
I could care less about the poll. What significance does a poll have right now?
College football lives here. ESPN Radio.
The College Football Playoff on ESPN and on ESPN Radio.
Ohio State had a great win last weekend against Penn State. That head-to-head matchup is important to the selection committee and will continue to be important to the selection committee.
Who's in?
Let's talk about those Buckeyes blown out by Iowa.
The Big Ten was a big loser.
Barrett throws 4 interceptions. Stanley throws none and 5 touchdowns. There's something else wrong with Ohio State.
Obviously, turnovers, we couldn't stop them, and we just didn't play very well.
Let's talk about the Big 12 bedlam.
Oklahoma is still hanging in there with 1 loss to Iowa State.
Defensively, the metrics do not add up to Oklahoma getting into the playoff.
You know, those guys put on a show. Really, really good football teams went at it, especially 2 elite quarterbacks.
The College Football Playoff.
Wisconsin controls their own destiny, and just be curious to see if they can reach their potential. You really think they're going to be left out? Absolutely not.
There's no ifs about it. Wisconsin is getting left out. You can book that one.
Who's in?
Miami and Wisconsin, their weak strength of schedules weren't enough to impress the selection committee in spite of those undefeated records.
The College Football Playoff on and ESPN Radio.
Alabama and Georgia play. You're telling me you think Georgia's a better team than Alabama?
Who's in?
This is Jerome from Birmingham, previously from the Paul Feinbaum Show.
Bobo is up next. Bobo, go right ahead.
What is Butch Jones' future as a head coach?
Butch Jones' future as a head coach, Bobo, is the same with a win or a loss. He has no future. He is going to be replaced. At what point in time, I have no earthly idea. I think it's pretty obvious that John Curry made a mistake.
The Paul Feinbaum Show, weekdays at 3 Eastern on the ESPN app and on the SEC Network.
Some of the most severe sanctions in the NFL's history resulted from Bounty Gate.
Everyone's like, oh yeah, they're just dirty players. That's why they won the Super Bowl and all this stuff.
In the latest sit-down with Ryan Russillo, we get the inside story on Bounty Gate from former Saint Jonathan Vilma.
I put up $5,000 of my own money to start the season. I get paid for violence.
Bounty Gate, tomorrow at 2:30 Eastern on the Ryan Russillo Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Levitard. The Dan Levitard Show, 10 to 1 Eastern on ESPN Radio.
See, very intrigued by the Dan Levitard Show on ESPN Radio.
You're right on with Tyson here, because up until the end of his career, he didn't fight anyone.
Yes, he didn't fight anybody, and then he became a phenomenon anyways, because he was crazy, because he was young, and because his style was impetuous. His defense was impregnable. I want to eat his children. Voila.
The Dan Levitard Show, now 10 to 1 Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPNRadio.com. Dan Levitard.
Does Trey Wingo sound like a 3-count chicken wing appetizer dish at a Mexican restaurant run by white people?
The Dan Levitard Show with the Stugats on ESPN Radio and ESPNU.
Mike and Mike.
Why did the Patriots trade Jimmy Garoppolo to the 49ers yesterday?
Going back to the spring, the Patriots made attempts to re-sign Jimmy Garoppolo to keep him in New England, and they were unable to do so. And they continued to try, and they continued not to be able to get something done. It became apparent after a certain amount of time that they were not going to be able to re-sign him, that obviously the opportunities and money were going to be too great on the market.
Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. Football Sunday on ESPN Radio. The Packers have dropped 3 straight and 2 without Aaron Rodgers. Brett Hundley showed signs of promise Monday night, but now they head to Soldier Field as underdogs for the first time in 9 years when they face the Bears.
Take off the training wheels. Let this kid play. Live in your hopes, not in your fears.
Football Sunday. The Packers and Bears.
We're working our way towards kickoff.
Noon Eastern on ESPN Radio.
I love sports. I just wish they could be with me always. They say you don't choose the app chooses you. It is everything I could ever want in a sports companion. It can stream the games and shows that I love, and it's there whenever I need it. I never thought I could find an app that loves sports as much as I do. Until now.
Download the ESPN app to stream ESPN Radio and all the ESPN networks now.
And now, a Mike and Mike throwback moment.
Please welcome Mike Golick and Mike Greenberg. Go to Mike Golick and Mike Greenberg. And Mike Golick and Mike Greenberg. Here they are, Mike Golick and Mike Greenberg. Come on out, boys.
The first time we were here, we were standing there in the wings, and Mike said to him as we're about to be introduced, now when Dave says our name, should we walk in front of the chairs or behind the chairs to shake his hand? And Biff looked right at him and said, I don't give a damn where you go.
Hashtag MM Say Thanks. Presented by Amazon Music Unlimited. ESPN Radio Sports Center.
From Tim Basketball, two-time Cy Young Award winner Roy Halladay has died today at the age of 40 when his private plane crashed in the Gulf of Mexico. The eight-time All-Star threw a perfect game in the regular season, tossed a no-hitter in the playoffs, and won over 200 games over 12 Major League seasons before retiring after the 2013 campaign. Halladay, one of 7 pitchers to throw at least 2 no-hitters, one of 5 in league history with multiple Cy Young Awards and multiple no-hitters. Meantime, Georgia, Alabama, Notre Dame, and Clemson held their spots in the top 4 of the college football playoff rankings. The unbeaten Miami Hurricanes moved up 3 spots to number 7 prior to their matchup with the Fighting Irish. Oklahoma remained 5th. TCU moves up to 6th. Those 2 play on Saturday as well. Unbeaten Wisconsin, number 8. Highest-ranking Big Ten team, Washington. Highest-ranking Pac-12 team at 9, and Auburn rounds out the top 10. Penn State, Ohio State are out after losses this past weekend. ESPN's Jeff Goodman reporting 3 UCLA men's basketball players, including LiAngelo Ball, the younger brother of Lonzo, were arrested in China just days before Friday's season-opening game against Georgia Tech. Arrested on shoplifting charges, questioned about stealing from a Louis Vuitton store. ESPN's Mark Schlabach reporting a federal grand jury has indicted former Auburn basketball assistant Chuck Person and former NBA referee Rashawn Michael on multiple federal charges, the 2 among 10 men arrested in late September as part of an FBI investigation into corruption in college basketball. NBA, the Suns have traded guard Eric Bledsoe to the Bucks for forward Greg Monroe and a pair of draft picks, including a 2018 first-rounder, which is protected on the court. The Bucks leading the Cavs this game starting the third quarter. Milwaukee up top 71-70. Giannis Antetokounmpo has 21. Kevin Love with 20. Packers coach Mike McCarthy confirming Brian Bulaga, their offensive tackle, out for the season. Torn ACL in his right knee. The 1-game suspension of Bucks wideout Mike Evans has been upheld.
The Giants move to 1-7 after getting blown out against the Rams. Is it time for the Giants to move on from Eli Manning? We'll ask John Gruden when he joins Mike and Mike Wednesday morning at 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPN2.
It's the College Football Playoff Rankings Reaction Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. He's Mike Golick Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Progressive celebrating 5 years and more than 500 cars donated to vets. To learn more, visit keystoprogress.com. All of our callers are via the Shell Penzo Performance Line. And we'll go straight there. We've been giving you our reactions. We want to bring in somebody that can help us move that along. Andy Staples, college football writer for Sports Illustrated and Sirius XM college football host. So, Andy, when you looked about it, what do you think we've learned about what the committee values at this point now that we've seen 2 rankings?
Who have you beaten? That's it. It's who have you beaten, and that's why Notre Dame is as high as it is. That's why Wisconsin's as low as it is. That's why Miami's where it is. They want to know who is good that you have beaten. And, the one kind of outlier is Alabama. And I think that's probably a little bit reputation and a little bit eye test and common sense. And Alabama's in the mix every year. But Georgia is number one because they beat Notre Dame, because they whipped Mississippi State. That's where they're getting their juice from. And Wisconsin, I know what Barry Alvarez said, but they need to beat somebody. But the thing is, they're going to get a chance to beat somebody. They're going to play Iowa this week. They're going to play Michigan. Then they're potentially going to play, Michigan State, Ohio State, somebody like that in the Big Ten title game. So it looks like it'll work itself out. And the thing, if you look at that top four, actually, if you look at the top six, there's potential for massive chaos this weekend. I mean, number one, number two, and number three all have tough road games. Number 5 and number 6 play each other. We're assuming Clemson's going to beat Florida State because Florida State's having a terrible year, but it's still a Clemson-Florida State game. I mean, there's potential for massive upheaval on this thing.
Talking to Andy Staples on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Andy, is there any version of chaos you mentioned with all those matchups coming up this weekend that results in an improved situation for a Pac-12 conference that sees Washington check in at number 9?
I just think Washington's got to keep winning and hope that a couple other conference champs take some losses and hope Notre Dame takes some more losses, because they're going to be viewed as the weakest conference champ. And, let's say Notre Dame's 11-1, and let's say Washington plays USC in the Pac-12 championship. Their game against USC is going to be compared to Notre Dame's game against USC. That's the thing they've got to worry about. So it's weird, because usually a one-loss Power 5 champ, you're saying, oh, they're fine. But they could need some help.
So with that being said, Andy, what value should a conference championship actually have to the committee?
None. It's the best 4 teams. And whether somebody got together in 1933 and decided to play together doesn't really matter to me.
So I guess in that regard, but you still said this is about who you've beat going forward so far. So at what point does best still give way to what you've actually done and performed on the field? Because I guess that's the argument of, you say best and you think of that's why Alabama's at number 2 you mentioned before, but also most deserving tends to be everything else that we've seen out of this.
Well, Bama's going to get their chance to get that part of it too. The ranking that matters on December 3rd, Alabama will have played at Mississippi State. They will have played at Auburn. They will have played Georgia in the SEC championship game, assuming they beat Auburn. And if they do that, I think they're going to be firmly entrenched in the top 4 if they're undefeated. Now, I actually think Alabama is in more danger. That 2 SEC team making the playoff scenario, I think, only works with Alabama winning the SEC championship game and Notre Dame being 11-1, kind of buoying kind of buoying Georgia, where Georgia cannot possibly drop below them at 12-1. But if Georgia beats Alabama in the SEC championship game, I think Alabama's probably out.
So with that being said, let's look at the Big Ten. Obviously, a difficult weekend for them. What, in your mind, at this point, can Wisconsin do to change whatever the perception is on their schedule?
Just keep on winning. If they're 13-0 and the Big Ten champs, they're going to get in the playoff. There will be enough chaos and stuff happening between now and December 3rd that they will get in at 13. I really can't see them being left out.
And going into this weekend, another big game that you mentioned, Notre Dame has a lot on the line, especially not having a conference championship. But what do you expect out of the matchup between them and Miami as they head into what probably, I know our measurements have that as one of the biggest leverage games going forward for the playoff championship?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, and the way Notre Dame's been playing, they look like the better team. And the question is Josh Adams completely healthy? And I know they held him out of the Wake Forest second half just to make sure. Brandon Wimbush hasn't been forced to throw them to a win yet, but I do believe he's capable of that. I think if Notre Dame plays as well as it's capable of playing, they should be able to beat Miami. But the thing was, Miami showed us something last week. They've been living so dangerously, and you thought, okay, look, you're squeaking by Florida State, you're squeaking by Georgia Tech, you're squeaking by North Carolina. Eventually, that's going to catch up to you. But then they put the hammer down on Virginia Tech in a game where Malik Rozier had 3 interceptions. So I think it's possible if they're doing what they're, forcing turnovers, shutting down the run game, they can be, a playoff team. And they don't have to win this game to be a playoff team. If they lose close and then go ahead and win the ACC at 12-1 and beat Clemson in the ACC title game, they're there's still a good chance they could be in. So it's a much bigger game for Notre Dame than it is for Miami, but it would be good for Miami to just go ahead and win it if they can.
We're talking to Andy Staples, college football writer for Sports Illustrated. Andy, in your mind, when you look at the rankings, who are we not paying enough attention to right now?
Auburn. They're the interesting one. And it's such a crazy situation because Auburn always feels volatile. And they're in a situation where if they win their next 3 games, well, if they win their next 3, they would play a 4th. And let's say they won their next 4 games, and they were 11-2 and the SEC champion, and in a 2-week span they've beaten Alabama and Georgia. I think that might make them the first 2-loss team in the playoff. Now, here's the flip side of that scenario. Let's say Georgia goes in there this weekend and beats them by 14 points, and then Alabama beats them by 3 touchdowns. You might see Gus Malzahn get fired. That's the ceiling to the floor for Auburn right now, and it's pretty wild.
It's fantastic stuff. Andy Staples, college football writer for Sports Illustrated, SiriusXM college host. Andy, we appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on with us, man.
Thank you, guys.
So, you buy a 2-loss Auburn in the playoff?
I think that was interesting. I'm trying to figure out what's the more interesting assertion here is that a 2-loss Auburn team is still a viable playoff contender. And at 10 of the rankings, because this is what I was looking at here, and he kind of answered my question with it, is what's the lowest ranked team we think can make hay in this? Because in the first 2 years of the playoff, we had in year 1, 14th ranked Ohio State in the second playoff ranking release. So this week's ranking in 2014, Ohio State, your eventual national champion, checked in at number 14. 2015, we had 2 teams outside of the top 10. Michigan State checked in at number 13. Oklahoma checked in at number 12. Both of those teams end up making the college football playoff. So who outside of the top tier are we thinking of has the best chance? And you look down, there is a glut of 2-loss teams once you get to that point from Auburn on down. So you look at 2-loss Auburn, USC, Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State. And you know it's going to be difficult for a lot of those teams because of their conference situation. Auburn has the most chance for upside, I think, left on their schedule. A lot of these teams are at 2 losses with their biggest games already behind them. Auburn's got their best yet in front of them still. They've got a chance for, like Andy talked about, the committee, what they value, your best win, what you've put on that resume. And Auburn's 2 best wins of the season, potentially 3 if they go on and find their way into an SEC title that they still control their own destiny in. Potentially 3 best wins of the season, all still ahead of them. That would be a hard team to keep out. The other crazy assertion, Miami, if they lose this weekend, still very viable in this conversation because it doesn't affect their standings in the ACC.
But think about this. What if Miami wins this weekend, goes to the ACC championship game undefeated, and they lose a 1-point instant classic game to Clemson?
Then that's still a 1-loss Clemson team who's got head-to-head at the end of the season that is rightly more valued because it's at the end of the year when you've got these 2 complete products. They would both be a 1-loss team then, correct?
Right. And could you make the point that at that point they both would have a resume that would warrant the college football playoff? We keep talking about 2 SEC teams getting in. We're not having a conversation about the fact that there is a realistic, viable scenario that could warrant the discussion of 2 ACC teams getting in. Because that feels icky. Like that's what it comes down to. We hear the SEC and we're like, oh, yeah, 2 SEC teams. Makes sense. There is a scenario where 2 ACC teams could go. You could end up with 2 SEC teams, 2 ACC teams. Leave everybody else out.
That becomes very interesting looking down the stretch. They've got Notre Dame, Virginia, and Pitt before what would be the ACC title game. The only difference there really becomes that Georgia would play, I guess it would end up being the same thing as Notre Dame. They'd play Auburn and then Alabama. Both would have a common win over Notre Dame. That would be a really interesting scenario, one that I'm not sure they would let happen. But, man, the more I play it over in my head, you just kind of blew my mind, Fitzy. I'm going to have to take a minute to process this one. I wasn't prepared for that.
I'm here for one gem a show, and that's what I'm good at.
Put them both in. Let's do it.
We're going to have a 2-on-2. It's going to be like an old-school WWE tag team match. That's what we're going to do for the final. I've got it all figured out. We're going to keep the conversation going, obviously, on Twitter. Come to Periscope. Hang out with us. We might try some pro wrestling. You never know what's going to happen there. And we'll keep answering your questions there. But we have a Saturday coming up, matchups across the board with huge playoff implications. We'll look ahead to all of that action, plus more of your phone calls, 888-729-3776, 888-729-3776. This is the Rankings Reaction Show, ESPN Radio, and the ESPN app.
Let's talk about those Buckeyes blown out by Iowa.
The Big Ten was a big loser.
Barrett throws 4 interceptions. Stanley throws none and 5 touchdowns. There's something else wrong with Ohio State.
Obviously, turnovers. We couldn't stop them, and we just didn't play very well.
Hi, it's Jamie, Progressive's Employee of the Month, 2 months in a row. Leave a message at the... Hi, Jamie. It's me, Jamie. I just had a new idea for our song about the Name Your Price tool. So when it's like, tell us what you want to pay, hey, 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 and the trombone goes, blah, 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 and you say, we'll help you find coverage options to fit your budget. Then we just all do finger snaps while a choir goes, savings coming at ya, savings coming at ya. Yes? No? Maybe? Anyway, see you at practice tonight. I got new lyrics for the rap break.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Do you need a car? Been shopping only to be turned down because of bad credit, low credit, no credit, bankruptcy, or divorce? Guess what? Today's your lucky day, because now you can buy a car, truck, or SUV, just about any vehicle. It's true. Bad credit doesn't matter. No credit doesn't matter. Bankruptcy or divorce, it just doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, your job is your ticket to your new vehicle. We're Auto Credit Express, and we've helped thousands of people just like you. Antonio H. told us, great company, got me connected, and the day I went in, I drove off in the car I wanted. 100% worth your time. Need a car? Get started now and drive off as early as today. Just go to oneignoremyscore.com right now. That's www.1ignoremyscore.com. Auto financing the easy way. Oneignoremyscore.com. Get started today. Auto financing the easy way.
54-yard touchdown pass.
This is Pat Narduzzi, head football coach of the Pittsburgh Panthers.
Hi, this is Larry Fedora, head football coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels.
It's college football
on ESPN Radio.
Let's go. We came to eat. We came to eat. Do you believe that you can win this fight tonight?
The North Carolina Tar Heels travel to Pittsburgh to face the Pitt Panthers. Coverage begins Thursday at 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and on the ESPN app. Presented by the 2018 Ford F-150.
Football Sunday on ESPN Radio. The Packers have dropped 3 straight and 2 without Aaron Rodgers. Brett Hundley showed signs of promise Monday night, but now they head to Soldier Field as underdogs for the first time in 9 years when they face the Bears.
Take off the training wheels. Let this kid play. Live in your hopes, not in your fears.
Football Sunday. The Packers and Bears.
We're working our way towards kickoff.
Noon Eastern on ESPN Radio.
This is Larry in Missouri, previously on the Paul Feinbaum Show.
And Buddy Martin joins us. 10 coaching changes at Florida. And by the way, all but 2 of them are over offense, it seems like. This is how I think they could go and kind of how I think they would go. Without question, moving to the top slide, Scott Frost. I've read too many things about him that really impressed me, especially his fun. If you notice, Scott Strickland emphasized the word fun in the press conference. This guy knows how to have fun with his players. They all like him, respect him. Plus, he's got a remarkable resume of people he's played for. Check this out. How's his name? Bill Walsh, Tom Osborne, Bill Parcells, Mike Tomlin, and John Gruden. And by the way, one of the guys who's highest on him is Tony Dungy. I'd say that's a pretty good resume and a pretty good list of references right there.
The Paul Feinbaum Show, weekdays at 3 Eastern on the ESPN app and on the SEC Network.
College Football Playoff Rankings Reaction Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. He's Mike Golick Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. All callers on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. We have been out on Twitter during all of the breaks. This is the longest I think I've ever gone on radio in my life and not tinkled. So when this show ends, I am going to run. I'm going to push people over. And whatever happens, happens. I'm either going to pee in my pants or on your floor. Yeah, I don't know what happens.
For those of you guys that don't know, Jason Fitz, his claim to fame is basically taking the energy drink cocktail from hell down before he does any sort of appearance on radio. I'm talking a Monster drink in a 5-hour. I think there's some espresso in there. I mean, this is basically something just a step below getting towards the really hard stuff. I worry about your heart because you're not a young man anymore, despite your vampirish appearance. You're not a young man anymore, so you've got to be with this stuff.
Yeah, I really like the way sugar-free energy drinks taste, so it's not uncommon for me to have
but it's sugar-free. Don't worry about it, guys. Everyone, Fitzy's going to be all right. It's sugar-free.
How do you stay skinny? I mean, it's not uncommon for me to have like half a dozen of the big monsters a day. Like that's just.
Is that a fat joke, by the way?
No. You look very svelte. You've actually.
I'm just saying.
I see your old ESPN.
That under your breath. It's getting. Man, you might want to just move on. Read the billboard or something.
Oh, my God. You know what I need to send you? I need to do the only way I make this better if I send you some flowers. That's about the only way I'm going to do it. And when I do it, it's going to be through 1-800-Flowers.com. If your football obsession has strained your relationship like it's straining our relationship now, for a limited time, 1-800-Flowers is offering up to 40% off best-selling bouquets and gifts perfect for birthdays, anniversaries, and making up to your co-hosts. Just go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. No, you look very good. Every time I see the promo picture of you they put up on ESPN when you're with the big boys on Mike and Mike, I'm like, you know what? Golick needs a new picture.
Now it sounds a little bit like you're hitting on me. I'm going to have to call HR.
You're the one that talked about the chaps earlier. So we've been having we've been having the conversation on Twitter and on radio as we look at it. There are some massive games though this weekend, obviously, and I think every year we feel this late in the season, but particularly this weekend. It's hard not to look at it and say, man, college football, I don't know, has ever felt stronger or better than it does right now to me, because this weekend is a perfect example. You look up and down the board. We have top 10 teams playing each other all over the place.
It gets really interesting, especially inside the top 10. One of the games we've been talking about, Notre Dame heading down to Miami to take on the undefeated Hurricanes. We have the poll up on ESPN Radio right now. And Fitzy, this has never happened in the history of the polls, by the way. Never happened before. It's at 50-50 right now. Can you guys believe this? Never happens.
I'm going to get out there now and vote while you talk, just to help you.
Any of that. So we've got Notre Dame versus Miami that seems to at least decide Notre Dame's fate definitively. We've figured out through your advanced tinkering with a little bit of the schedule here that a one-loss Miami team, this late in the season, losses become decidedly bigger setbacks, because we know building towards the more complete version of your product right now, it's weighted a little differently than a loss earlier in the season that you're able to overcome. But to your point, if a one-loss Miami team that still controls its own destiny in the ACC gets to and beats or even loses to, I guess, at that.
I got an undefeated Miami team.
Undefeated Miami. Yeah. That was your 2 ACC team, but still could get to the ACC championship game, potentially beat Clemson in that scenario, and still be a one-loss team with an ACC title in their belt, looking at the playoff committee and saying, all right, what do you got for us?
I mean, that's what's really staggering. Plus, Oklahoma TCU, I mean, again, I'm going to say this loud and proud. Could we, as a group, as a media group, have been more wrong about the Big 12 going into the season? The number of people that were talking across the board about the Big 12 sort of not being worth anything and not being able to really field a lot of competitive football. There may not be some of the excellence across, but it feels like the conference, that particular conference was underrated coming into the season. I think they've turned out to be better than we expected, even if none of them play any defense.
I think this is one of those, they are who we thought they were, right? This is a conference that's going to put up a ton of offensive numbers. Baker Mayfield living up to the expectation we've had in the last few years as a Heisman Trophy candidate, the odds-on favorite by the Westgate Las Vegas Superbook right now, but not going to play any defense. They're 69th in defensive efficiency in the nation, and we wait and see how much the committee is going to value things like that, because, again, when you get down to all these one-loss teams who potentially have conference titles under their belt, those metrics start to matter, because then they're looking at, all right, who provides these best games? Who really is the best portion of this? And that's when the eye test, that's when some of those more advanced metrics can start to seep into the equation. But that gets solved in part this weekend with Oklahoma and TCU. And I know we've talked about a lot of things. I think Oklahoma wins this one decidedly. I think TCU has been living on borrowed time. A win that, the more I look back at it, seemed kind of fluky against Oklahoma State, now gets remedied here.
If you missed the rankings as they were released, the top four stay the same: Georgia, Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, Oklahoma at 5. The big surprise, a 2-loss Auburn team sneaks in number 10. Adam in Nebraska, thanks for hanging on. Thanks for calling the show, Adam. What do you got?
Hey, I got a question for Golick. Notre Dame's done so well this year, and obviously on offense, you know about number 33. But do you think that Wimbush is getting stronger game by game?
Absolutely, and going back and rewatching Wake Forest today, and seeing that he was asked to put the ball in the air a lot more.